Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As he mentioned, I'm sitting here in Salt Lake City, and Donald, you're sitting where?
I'm in Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. So Donald and I actually met through some research related to DNA and some projects that we have hopefully coming up soon. And so I just give a little bit of intro for the two of us, basically, on where our background comes from. Personally, I'm the director of the National Sons of the American Revolution Genealogical Research Library in Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, their headquarters is in Louisville, Kentucky. We have a national genealogical library that we would love people to pop in and see us in downtown Louisville. But I've been researching my ancestry since I was about 16. DNA for me has not been a really big deep dive. Yes, I've tested in a couple different places. Yes, I've uploaded my results. As far as racial interactions or racial designations, for me, the matches are very far down. I have discovered a free woman of color in my background as my fifth great grandmother. So, but there's part of the challenge as far as so far back. I'm going to pass that over more to Donald, because I know Donald has really been working a lot with matches, and where you got started, Donald, how all of this came about for you.
I've been interested in my family history since childhood. What had happened was back when I was probably a preteen, I'd asked my father, I won't call him my father, call him my dad, because anybody can father a child, but my dad, I had asked him, hey, where did our family originate? And I'm in Missouri. Like I said, I'm in St. Louis right now, but I grew up in a town called Crystal City. It's about 35 miles south of St. Louis. And come to find out, didn't have to really go too far to get the background on my dad's family. Specifically, my paternal grandmother, my dad's mother's side, they were actually slaves in the next county over in Franklin County, Missouri. So I knew more about grandma's family growing up than any line or branch of my tree. Um, I also, my dad had told me a lot of information about my second great grandfather, who has over my life been a personal hero. I knew a lot about him. He was a slave till he was 18, and then went on to own a lot of land and almost had a town built. Very interesting story. So he's kind of been my personal hero. So that had always triggered me, and always been in the back of my mind. Fast forward to when I got out of the military, I went back to college and started doing a little research and was able to find a little bit more information on him, but I got stuck. 2020, the pandemic hits, and I've got a lot of free time on my hands. So I was like, I'm gonna dive in here to Ancestry, do the DNA, start doing some things. One of the things that was very important happened to me when I was a teenager. I had had some, unfortunately, some incidents where I had dealt firsthand with some racism and had been called the N-word a couple times and had started getting mixed feelings about the opposite race. So I came home one day from school and was very upset and had some choice words, unfortunately. And my dad was like, hey, slow down. You can't hate what you are. So I had to take a pause. And when he told me that, he said, hey, go talk to mama, not my mom, his mom. So when I went and talked to grandma, she had kind of explained, hey, here's probably what he didn't want to tell you because it was probably going to cause some, heartache and some emotions. Well, come to find out, I'm come from mixed race family. My second great grandfather, who I knew a lot about, his dad, my third great grandfather, was biracial. And his dad was actually the slave master and was a white man. So my grandma went on to explain, hey, that's why he told you that, you're going to find you have a lot of mixed blood, you have a lot of diverse blood, and you do have a lot of European blood. Well, back then, obviously, DNA wasn't big. They weren't doing the testing. So when we get now to 3 years ago in 2020, I do the DNA test on Ancestry and come to find out I'm over a third European, come back 37, 38% European. So that explains a lot of things. Now, what was interesting is to come to find out that not only was it on my grandma's side, but it was on my dad's side. Both of his parents were biracial. So I have three great whatever grandfathers that were actually the slave masters of my ancestors. So therefore, I have been fortunate and unfortunate because I have been able to link up with my white cousins and some of the descendants. So I have actually made some connections. But like we're talking about today, there are challenges. Like you said, you had found your fifth great grandmother, but it was so kind of further down the line. So, like I said, there is some frustration, but there also are some good points because I have been able to connect. So that's kind of where I'm at. So about the last 3 years, long story short, have really been, it's become a passion of mine. I've been really driven and through that research, been able to meet good folks like Cheri, and here we are today.
So I have a question for you as I listen to the story, because I've heard the story before and I love this one. So my question is, you had that conversation with your dad when you encountered the racial challenges, so socially, culturally, as a young man, and he told you this, and then you went to talk to his mom. So has the DNA testing, number one, was that the first time that you can remember having that racial conversation about the mixed ethnicity in your background? Was that the first time you think that had been mentioned to you as a family? And then once you started with the DNA testing, did that increase some of these conversations? Have you then talked more with your family? Did it bring out more conversations, I guess is what I'm.
Absolutely, yes. And to answer the first question, yes, that was the first time. Obviously, looking at my skin color, I knew I was a little bit lighter than a lot of my Black friends and, my mom and dad. What was interesting to find out is after talking to my grandma, not only did she tell me about her family and my grandpa's family, she was also able to advise me that my mom's dad's side also had a lot of mixed blood. I knew my mom's dad. She was raised by her stepfather, but I naturally knew her biological father, and I knew his family, and I knew I was cousins. But obviously, her grandparents had passed along by the time I was born, so I didn't know them. And then with my mom, on her mom's side, there wasn't a lot of mixed race in her mother's side. And her mother's family, she always thought that it was small because a lot of them had passed on at early ages. But now, since I've done the research, come to find out her family, her mother's side, both her mother's parents, 11 kids, on both sides. So I come from very large bloodlines on, my mom and my dad's side. So yes, it did. That was the first time. And then the second part of your question, did it trigger more conversations? Absolutely. Started talking to my dad a lot. He told me as much as he could, led me to reach out to other family members on my dad's side, my grandma's side that I knew had been doing research themselves. So yes, it did trigger a lot of information. I was also able to find out more about, the family, which was really good. For example, I thought my second great grandfather was the only child. Come to find out, he was the baby boy of three. And so I was able to find out through his death certificate about my third great grandparents, and found out that my third great grandfather originated in Kentucky in the Lexington area, which led me to you because I know you did research for Kentucky Historical Society before you joined the Sons of the American Revolution. So it triggered a cycle, and just, it's led me down this path. So it has, I've been able to gain a lot of knowledge and find out, like I said, a lot of diversity. And one of the things that I wanted to make a point about on here today, and I want to say it before I forget, is that I would encourage people who have any curiosity to go ahead and look into it, because it's going to surprise you. I have thousands and thousands of cousins. Some of them are mixed, and I have thousands of cousins who are completely white. And I've actually been blessed enough to make contact with them and gain some friendships and some pretty good knowledge. There are still some challenges, but it has been rewarding. So yeah, it did open up a floodgate of conversations. Unfortunately, one of the things that you will see is that with African Americans, we were listed as chattel. So that kind of runs into a problem because some slave owners listed slaves by name, but mostly we were male, female, black, mulatto, and then an age. So you run into some difficulties. But if you can reach out, you're going to have to be patient. You can find out some information. Yeah, but it is a process. It definitely is a process.
So when you first started connecting to some of the white families in your DNA matches, um, how did you go about approaching them, and what was the reactions that you were getting? I know that that's been a long journey for you.
Yeah, and very interesting, and to say the least.
Yeah.
I had to be patient. What I didn't want to do is overwhelm people because I didn't want them to think that I had a hidden agenda or that I was looking for something or make them feel like they owed me something. Basically, what I did, I explained what I was trying to do, what my purpose was. It was to really gain knowledge. My purpose and my destination of this is to find out as much as I could about who I am and where I come from. I want to know as much as I can, not only for myself personally, but to leave a legacy for the people behind me and my family. And so it's like I said, it's a really big passion of mine. So what I had to let them know is, hey, here's what I know. Here's what I'm trying to do. I've noticed that through the DNA results, it shows that we have a link somewhere. Could you help me with as much information as you can? Here's where I'm at. Here's showing where it connects, and here's where my ancestors are from. Could you help me? I have had mixed results. I have had people that have, been more than welcoming and have got back with me immediately, said, hey, here, Donald, here's what I know. This is as much as I know. What you may want to do, you may want to go down this path, you may want to go down this path, you may want to check here. And like I said, they've been very supportive. Then I have people I have seen them have information. For example, on Ancestry is a good site. I'm not a spokesman for any DNA or genealogy sites, but I do like them because they will not only have trees, they have ethnicity, and then they have matches on there. So you can kind of tell by obviously by the ethnicity, someone's race. But also the good thing about it is that they'll tell you what parent side, parent one or two, that these matches come from, but they'll also show common matches. So you'll know based on the common matches, okay, this is on my dad's side. This is where this is come, where this person is, we relate.
And you're talking about seeing the ethnicity of your matches, right?
Yes.
So that's how and that's a really important point, I think, because so many of us, as we see the list of our matches, not many people have their photograph. So you can't visually say, this is a Black person or a white person, so to see those ethnicities, that's really been helpful for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a good thing. And like I said, there's been some people that have been very supportive and encouraging. Matter of fact, I have had some white people reach out to me and say, hey, I see that we're matches. I always had a feeling, because they may know that somewhere down their tree and in their family history and who they descend from, that those folks were slave owners. So they've always had maybe in the thought of their mind, hey, maybe I do have Black cousins. You
Yeah.
know, I even had a lady tell me, hey, it's a known fact that our family there were mixed race children by the slave owner impregnating slave women. It was kind of taboo to talk about, kind of hush hush. And
Right.
I had one person come to find out who we're cousins.
Yeah.
Um, and she had told me when she tried to discuss this with family members, she was hushed. So she was kind of excited when I reached out to her because she had always wanted to know.
Yeah.
And she's a female, and ironically, what wound up happening because of my approach and because I wasn't too aggressive with her and told her what I was trying to do was very open, and honest. She eventually emailed me one day and said, hey, Donald, I'm gonna go ahead and do some further DNA and I'm gonna do some gen match and come to find out, well, we're definitely cousins. And it's a very strong and high match, which is going to help me with, like you said, we have some other projects that we're working on together that we're
Right.
not going to discuss today for a number of reasons. But um, that was a blessing. And then through that conversation, I was able to meet even more people that she was cousins with and come to find out, oh, yeah, we all come from the same fourth great grandfather.
Yeah.
Those have been positive experiences. Now, let's flip the page to the other side and unfortunately talk about some negative things. Have been ghosted, people who just went silent. I have seen people who have made their trees private on Ancestry because they now know that they have some African American blood.
Yeah.
They're maybe not comfortable talking about it, which I can understand, but here's what we need to realize as human beings now, us folks in the present. I'm not condoning slavery. I identify as a Black African American. I am American, first of all. And that is my identity, that is my culture. But what I have to realize, and I had told you this previous in the conversation, I saw a quote one time by James Baldwin. And he said, we as Black folks, we can either drown in our past in slavery, or we can take that information and use it and grow ourselves and grow our knowledge. I choose to do the latter. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. It makes me so proud that I know my history now and I thank God that those folks, my ancestors, they went through that. I'm sorry they had to go through it. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but they went through it. They paid that price, so I didn't have to pay the price. My grandmother, my dad, my brothers, my cousins,
Yeah.
our generation now, we didn't have to pay the price for that. So I think it's very important that myself here, I had a lady tell me one time, this is stuck with you because she said you were chosen by your ancestors. And I thought that was kind of odd. But she said you were chosen before you were born to do this, to find all this information out, to do this for your family. So I take that very seriously, and it's become, like I said, a real big passion of mine, and that's why I'm just, happy to be here today. I meant to thank you at the beginning because you could have chose to speak to anybody. So what a blessing and an honor to be in this format and this platform and be able to address folks, and hopefully through this presentation meet even more folks and make even more connections, and maybe in the future have more discussions like this, speak on podcasts with other people. I'm definitely available to that, to network and gain as much knowledge and as I can and resources to reach out. So, but like I said, the biggest thing that I've had to learn is to be patient because, like I said, slavery, that time, very, very sensitive issue when it comes to race. Some people may be embarrassed to talk about it. They may be embarrassed because they come from slave owners. But I would advise anybody that's listening to this, if someone like myself reaches out, um, be open to the conversation. I have talked to a number of people like myself and my race, and I can assure you that the majority of us, we're not blaming you. We know you didn't have anything to do with it. But the simple fact of the matter is that we need your help. there's information that unfortunately we cannot get our hands on. And there may be some information, even if it's maybe something little, that even if you think it may not be something big, pass it along. I know
Yeah.
myself, I have made the mistake of running across information, and then when I look at it, I was like, okay, I'll come back to it later. And then I forget where I saw it at. And it's like, you know what? That little nugget could have helped me, now. So I'm in the process, as a matter of fact, of going back and trying to connect with folks and, connect and find some information that I previously did not jot down. So um,
Yeah.
I think, like I said, the biggest thing is that you can't be aggressive in the approach, because sometimes you don't want to overwhelm people, because they may not have any idea or any inclination that that could even be a remote possibility for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, going back even to some of the earlier part of your story, when you were talking about conversations, from just speaking from the white side, I don't ever remember having conversations with my family about about even our ancestors owning slaves. That just wasn't a conversation that we had. Now, a lot of the branches of our family either were from the North, or then they were from like the upper South. And so small farmers, didn't, I guess a lot of us didn't necessarily expect to find slavery in those families. And so it took a long time. I did find it eventually. And when I did, the thing that I think that I don't say a PSA for white people, I say, look, listen, if your family was here in the United States during the era of slavery, please expect it. You're going to find that somewhere. Your branches are going to be complex enough. You will find that you have enslavers in your ancestry. That's just the way this is going to happen. And there's also the idea that just because maybe you can't find enslavers in your background doesn't mean that your ancestors didn't father children off of enslaved women. There are many cases, especially in Kentucky, where we had leasing systems that were going on. You had folks that were more larger owners, and then they were leasing out enslaved people periodically every season. And it was very, very customary. And so the network of slavery meant there was a lot of opportunity for these children to be conceived. And so don't act surprised. Don't be surprised if you do encounter Black cousins in your tree, because this is America. That whole system of slavery was just, it permeated our country in many different ways. And so I think that's, an important thing. And another thing you said too was about patience in talking with folks. I think we all have that willingness to talk and grow with both sides, and just help each other get farther in the line, because that's what ultimately will happen. But also too, the psychological impact of learning some difficult information about it. It's not easy for anyone. It's not easy for either side to learn about this difficult part of our history. And when I, back in 2019, I think it was 2019, there was a program I did here at Roots Tech. It is still up on the on-demand videos. It was tackling difficult chapters of your family history. And one of the sections I covered was the psychological impact that goes along with discovering these difficult chapters, and that you may not think that that's going to affect you when you do first uncover this part of your history, but it does. And it's okay. Be patient with yourself. If you can't process that right away, take a little time. And for those who are encountering pushback, resistance, people that are not, really fully receptive to talking to descendants of enslaved people, when he says be patient, go back, right? I'm assuming, yes, you go back, give it a little time. Sometimes the first contact is not the one that makes it through, because they haven't really processed this yet. They haven't really thought, they hadn't maybe thought about it. They maybe hadn't even thought about that that's what they were going to encounter. And then over time, after they've had a little bit of time to process that, starting that conversation again might actually be more possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have found that um, I actually, and it's funny because I actually reached out to some folks who actually turned around and said, "Hey, I don't have any information, but is there any way maybe you could help me?"
Mm.
I've actually had some people who, I say about three or four folks who were adopted that have reached out to me. I haven't been able to, help them find exactly where they come from. But what I have been able to do during the process, like I said, with Ancestry, it's good because it'll tell you common matches. So I can go on there. They may not know the names because obviously the documents are sealed. But what I have been able to do with two females is I've been able to tell one, okay, hey, I can't say for sure what line you come from, but I can tell you for you, one female, I can tell her definitely, okay, I can almost assure you, you come from the same bloodline as my dad's mother. Then with another, I was able to tell her, hey, I can assure you somehow we are connected through my mom's mom. So that was, rewarding. Now, I haven't heard back from either one of them in a while. So hopefully they were able to find out some information. What was interesting is that I do have a match. She's adopted as well. But what's interesting, it looks like I may actually be related to her on both my mom and my dad's side. So I can see why she's having some problems. She's probably, all over the place,
Yeah.
which happens. And and like you said, that was a common thing in Kentucky. And what I've been able to find out on all my bloodlines, the majority of them are either from Virginia or Kentucky. And the ones that were from Virginia, they made their way to Kentucky and then eventually made their way to Missouri.
Yeah.
All my immediate ancestors were probably all slaves within, I'd say, anywhere between a 50 to 100-mile radius of where I was born and raised in Crystal City. I actually reside in Festus, Missouri now, which is the town over. But when I go back and I look at my trees, all of my family were from Missouri. And it's interesting because the town I grew up in used to have a large glass factory called Pittsburgh Plate Glass, PPG. And all of my family members on both sides at one time, my ancestors, all of them had migrated to the Crystal City area, and all of them were working in that factory at one time. So, so that was very interesting. So for me, my background, I didn't have to go to the deep south or way out on the east coast to find out, okay, hey, here's where they were slaves,
Yeah.
here's where they were. Now what I have been able to do on my paternal grandmother's side, like I said, I knew more about her family. I've actually had been blessed enough to, like I said, my second grandfather did a lot of things after slavery. He was a slave till he was 18, and he wound up owning two farms, which was very impressive to me. There was the
Yeah.
idea that black folks were going to get 40 acres and a mule. We
Right.
never got that, but he owned over 200 acres of farms, had 120 acres, and you go right around the corner from that, and it was 80-acre farm. Back in April of 2021, I was able to step foot on both of those on the same day, and it was um, quite an emotional thing because my dad and my grandma had told me about this all my life. And then to actually step foot and, like I told my dad, I said, it's amazing because you look at all that land and it's like, this man was working two farms at the same time. That's impressive. So for me, to get mad when I have a hard day at work, it's like I have to, pinch myself and remind me, hey man, they were out in that sun getting it,
Yeah.
you're working from home and on a home office, so suck it up, so to speak. But it just drives me. It really does. And then also this past spring, one of the biggest blessings in my life is that I was actually able to take my dad there myself, which usually it's the other way around. Hey, it's your daddy showing you something. But
Mhm.
for me to be able to show him that while he was still living was one of, it's one of the biggest blessings of my life because it's like, okay, here's what you told me about okay, now I'm gonna take you and I'm gonna actually be able to show you this, and this is what you told me, and this is true. Because I can remember when he told me about my second grandfather, I was young, so one of the first things I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say, I said, "Hey, grandma, my daddy said this," and she's like, "Yeah, it's true." So it's like, and then to be able to actually set foot there, and I have all the property deeds that he has, so I actually have proof of this. This is not something that's just, folklore or family lore. It's to actually see it in black and white and then to actually step foot on it. It's special. It really is. So, like I said, I'm just trying to find out more. But, like our topic is challenges. Don't get it twisted. There are challenges, and we're still running into brick walls,
Mm.
and it's still some delays and things that can be a little frustrating sometimes, and it definitely will test your patience. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think too, I can't emphasize enough, for all sides to, wherever you get tested, build in some generations back in that tree to help people connect on those branches. Because even Donald can see your ethnicity, it is, and yes, you can get some hints potentially, but there are some testing companies where people just don't put anything in, you just get a name. And therefore it's, you think you kind of almost, and unless they actually respond to your email that you may have, tried to reach out to them, it's just dead space. I mean, it doesn't really help that much. And so please be proactive in order to help these families learn more about their ancestry. Everybody please be proactive and build in just at least 5-6 generations back, as far as you know. You don't have to go super far back, but just even the 5-6 generations back can just be a really huge boost in helping people connect back to their heritage.
Oh, absolutely. And I can tell you from personal experience, even if you can go just back a couple generations, that's big too.
Yeah.
It helped me, especially on my mother's side, because what I did is I made a connection through my dad's side. Okay. And when I was talking to this gentleman, he said, "Hey, Donald, I'd really like to help you." And he said, "I really think I can get you some information on your dad's mom's side, because me and this guy, come to find out, we're distant cousins, and he's a Caucasian. And what he was able to do, because I had information on my tree went from about 200 people to over 1,200 people now, because just based on his help, he not only was able to help fill me in on my grandmother's side, my dad's mom's side, he gave me a wealth of information on my dad's side. And then what was really, really a blessing was my mom's side, because that was the side that we knew the least about. And then to come to find, and I've been able to share, like with my mom's sister, who's my aunt, who has a lot, of information, as much as she can, on our family. And also, so when I was able to tell her, hey, surprisingly enough, because I would ask my mom and she was like, I'm just not really sure, because everybody passed young. Like, for example, my granny, my mom's mom, died when I was 6 years old, and she was in her late 40s. She died young. Her mom died young. My mom's aunts, my great aunts passed. My great uncle passed at a young age. So we were really not sure about the family. But now, through this guy's help, not only was he able to help me with what I asked for, it was a blessing, because I was able to get even more. So I would encourage folks, black and white, if you're stuck anywhere, reach out for help. Be willing to share some information, because the little bit you share may open up a door and give you a wealth of information that you did not know, and it may save you a lot of time, because it really was truly a blessing for me, because like I said, my tree went from small to over 1,200 people in it now. And that was just in a matter of 2 or 3 days that this gentleman said, hey, sent me an email, or actually he texted me and said, "Hey, Don, when you get a chance, go on to Ancestry, check your tree. I found some information for you." Well, he didn't tell me he had added almost 1,000, people, which was really good, because I was able to reach out to people,
Yeah.
that I wasn't expecting to. because like I said, my primary focus was on what I knew, and that's still what I'm really working on now. But as I go along, I plan to branch out, and just take each line one by one and try to build up the knowledge. But like I said, don't be scared to share, because your sharing may turn around and bless you twofold. You may be able
Yes.
to get information that you've been stuck on, and just by sharing, because it's really about networking. It really
Yeah.
is, because there's information that's out there, and like, just from like talking to you, Cheri, we talk all the time. There's things that we'll discuss, and then the next time I get back with you, I'll be like, hey, I found this out, or you'll tell me, hey, Donald, I found this out, you might want to look into this avenue. And I have other friends that I have become really close with through this process, and that I talk to them a lot. It's amazing, because sometimes people will have information that they don't know how valuable it is until someone reaches out to them. And you may be sitting on something yourself, and you'll be like, okay, well, I'm not going to put that on, answers. I'm not going to put that on this site. But what you may want to do is go ahead and put it there, because what it may do is open up a line that will come back to not only help yourself, but it may help a family, and help them get generations of information that they've been stuck on.
Yeah.
My biggest thing now is my third great grandparents on my grandma's side. Know who they are, know where both of them were born, but it's like they fell off the face of the earth after slavery. Now we know that didn't happen.
Right.
So you will run into some stumbling blocks, and also one of the things that I would encourage people is, if you get some information and you do not know for sure that it is fact, don't put it on a tree, because that can cause problems too. Because I have been on websites and 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 seen things, and it's like, wait a minute, I know I'm not related to you. And then you'll start going down these trees, and it'll cause issues,
Yeah.
because you're thinking that something's true and it's not. And then you waste all this time, and then you come back all the way to point A again, and it's like, man, I
Yeah.
went down that rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
be very careful. I think what happens a lot of times is that, and I've seen this in my own experience. If someone, like, say for example, if your brother or sister marries someone and marries into a family, they marry into that family. Your whole family doesn't marry into that family. So you can't put that family that your brother or sister married in to your tree, because you're not technically related to them. And it can cause some problems. And it's like, okay, so, oh, I didn't know that. But then when you get to thinking, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not right. So now I've spent all this time trying to backtrack, and it's like it's a waste of time. So we have to be careful, and then sometimes people will, oh, well, we've got the last name, so I've got to be kin to them. You run into that a lot, especially when famous folks come into play. Well, I want to be related to them. I'm definitely their cousin. Not
Right.
everybody.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Oh, and I would love if more white families would become proactive in this, in helping with the search. There's some Facebook groups out there, and I'm not going to name some of them specifically, but if you look at some of them have put together even some GEDmatch numbers. So if anybody, that's again, GEDmatch is a third-party tool for those of you who haven't used it, where you can upload your raw DNA results. And I'm going to add the caveat on that. Read the ethics behind GEDmatch and what you're comfortable with, and putting that, but that is actually a really great place to help connect with even more families. There's even spreadsheets out there where they're putting out their GEDmatch numbers, just trying to hope, that they can match with some people. Seek out places that you can help in that way. As far as even just the racial challenges we have as America, to me, in fact, I gave a presentation yesterday on a family collection of letters that were written back and forth between enslaved people. Sometimes people were writing them the letters for them. Sometimes they had taught themselves how to read and write. But sadly, the family who originally owned the letters, they had lost their connection to who these people were. So when we talk about the period of right at the end of slavery, when these families are trying to connect back, that we really lost it as America. We totally just messed up. We really should have tried to help people get their families back together, try to make that. There's a quote out of a book called Claiming Kinfolk, and he says that that one of the definitions of slavery, basically scholars will argue, is a lack of kin. That slavery, that is a lack of kin, and that is one of the longest lasting repercussions of slavery. I think that we're just still so struggling with is there's that privilege. I hate to use the necessarily that coin that phrase, but we are privileged to have that our ancestors go back in the documents way far back, and that most enslaved people were just left out of the records. Now, not all. That's where we're also imploring people that there are a lot of families that did keep some records in Bible records and different ways, and that, my goodness, those are golden. Those are ways to actually hook those connections back together. And if we could be more proactive, I think, in reaching out to these groups and being involved and listening to them, listening to what is it that they need, what is it that they need for us to help. I think it would go a long way in restoring not only our nation's heritage and ancestry, how we're all connected. We're so related. I mean, at Roots Tech here, we talk about, are you my relative? We'd walk around with the little Roots Tech app, and we turn that on to see how we are related, and even relatives at Roots Tech. There's even a number, and how many, but just think about how that's easier for predominantly white families that go back connecting because their lines go back farther. And so if we can help a little bit more, we can maybe help heal some of the hurt feelings, and the challenges that exist in our nation now.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that you said that, because that definitely is true. Like I said earlier, I by no means would am condoning slavery, but I have to realize and accept that, unfortunately, my female ancestors, I mean, let's just be honest, we're all adults. These births were not out of love. This was out of power that the slave master had. It's a reality. It is very, very hard to accept and deal with. I had very mixed emotions when I found out, some of the things that I found out, for a fact that I have great grandfathers that are white men that owned my, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, great grandmothers who were female slaves. But like you just said, and I think it's very important coming from someone, in your skin, so to speak, to bring that up and make light of that. Yes, we are different. We do have different skin colors, but we all, well, not all of us, but there are a lot of us that are definitely related, and that we are connected, very much so. The climate of America, and I'm not going to try to get into politics, but I think it's very important for those of us who have Black and white. When you should know when you put your DNA out on Ancestry, Family Tree, 23andMe, you should know that there's a possibility that you're going to have some mixed blood come back. I think it's very important for us, especially as adults, to be very open-minded in the results that we will have, because the climate of America today, with a lot of history and books trying to be taken out of the public schools, it's going to be very, very important for folks like us to have a clear and mature mindset and pass that information along. I also would encourage, if there's any younger people who may be listening with their parents, I would encourage them, hey, get you a DNA kit. Parents, buy it for your kids. help them build their trees so they will know what's going on, because a lot of this information, the way that, like I said, the climate that we're in right now, that's going to be taken away. It was already limited being taught anyway until you, and a lot of times until you got to the college level. And even then, you know, some of the courses may have been limited in what you could do. So
Yeah.
what we have to do is we have to realize that, hey, you cannot hide this. This is part of history.
Yeah.
This is part of us as individuals. And if we're going to move forward, we have to know what happened in the past to prevent it from happening again, so we can build to be better people and better ourselves, not only individuals as a race. And when I say race, I'm not talking about black and white, I'm talking about the human race.
Yeah,
You
absolutely. Absolutely.
Whatever. We
Yes.
have to realize, hey, there are differences. Yes, there's differences. Absolutely. I'm not denying that. Like I said, I know if I walk out of this house today and I go out in public and somebody sees me do something that I'm not supposed to do, I'm not going to be, uh, uh, you know, described as a man. Oh, there's a guy who's 63% African American, 30% European. No, I'm going to be identified as a black man in the United States. I'm very cognizant of that. So we have to be realistic, but at the same time, we have to know that, hey, we all do have some similarities and they're there.
Right.
That's just the reality of the situation. So we've got to continue to be open-minded, have discussions like this. And that's, like I said, you know, I'm available, you know, for further conversations, whether it be with you in these formats, Zooms, podcasts. You know, I'm willing to speak at conferences. I was asked during, unfortunately, I had some personal medical issues. I was asked to speak at, you know, a couple museums, a chamber of commerce over in Franklin County where my family was from, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it. So that's, you know, so as long as I have a voice and God blesses me with the ability to communicate, that's what I'm going to do as long as I'm on the earth the rest of my life. Have discussions like this, try to be beneficial, not negative, help as much as I can. And then that blessing will come back to me and then will continue to grow. And then this thing will spread. And then people will be able to realize, hey, a lot of the things that we're divided about at the end of the day, it's nonsense. It
Right.
really is. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a Democrat, Republican thing. It's a people thing. Let's
Yeah.
let's bring it down a notch, you know,
Dial it
and
down.
let's work together. Yeah. It's pipe
Yeah.
down and
Pipe
it's
down.
gonna be okay. You know, nobody's, you know, it's not, like I said, none of us were there, but the reality of it is we're the descendants of that. We're what happened. We're here.
Yes.
We're here
Yes.
for a reason. You and I are having this discussion for a reason.
Yes. And
You
you
know,
know,
we're
one
in this format for a reason.
right. And one of the things too that I you know, that I just can't help, you know, I guess in a way, you know, when you see it, you see it. If you don't see it, you don't see it. But it's one of those things where I'm like, we're all family. Do we not get this? We are family. Both races, we are all family. Somewhere down the line, we're connected somewhere, we're cousins somewhere. And I feel like too, you know, there was, when I said we kind of as Americans, we missed it a bit, you know, when the Holocaust was over, the Red Cross swooped in and actually was trying to take kind of inventory of the people who were coming out of the camps and trying to connect them back to their families. And it's that we didn't have a system for that here in this country, that they were left on their own. There's a really good book, Help Me to Find My People. I can't remember what the author's name is right now. But anyway, that was a really good. She talks about how, you know, that one of the only methods they had was to put little notices in newspapers in cities, begging and pleading to say, have you seen my sister? The last I saw her, she was on plantation such and such, and I know she was sold, you know, to whatever. That network, I mean, they tried, and you know, it was only partially successful, I'm sure. And so that's where we have a responsibility, but we also have a great opportunity now with the digital nature of genealogy and how we can connect to people, and the DNA that automatically allows us to connect to people. We can start to restore these relationships, and I think just build on the relationships. We've just remained so divided. This is our opportunity to start, you know, to getting back together again and being that American family that we should be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. And it's like I was telling my dad one night. We talk just about every night. God bless him. And I was telling him, it's a shame that we didn't have all the technology and all the resources that we did. My grandmother died 30 years ago. And there's so much now that I wish I could go back. And I bugged her. Thank God she was patient. Her and my dad both had to bug him, and ask questions, which is really good because sometimes I'll talk to my dad and I'll bring up something and he may not remember. But then, a day or two later, we're on the phone and he said, "Hey, you remember you asked me about this the other night?" He said, "I was up thinking about it." And he said, "Have you ran across this, that, or the other?" Which is good for him because he's getting older. So it keeps his brain working and,
Yeah.
and it's fun. But there are so many things now that I was like, "Oh, I should have asked grandma this. I should have asked grandma that." And, you find out things from doing your research and it's like, man, I wish I, you know, was able to go back and ask her, "Hey, grandma, I saw this. Who was this?
Right.
Who is this person and did this happen? Do you know about this?" You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
I
I
totally agree.
do.
with you. And I have seen several things like you said where, there were slaves who maybe some got free and they were able to buy their freedom and go build a house. So now they're trying to get their families back. And you see the newspaper ads, "Hey, this is the last I remember them, here's where they were." Yeah, I get, both excited and sad when I see stuff like that because I couldn't
Right.
imagine, you
Right,
know.
exactly. I hate to cut us a little bit short. We do have some questions that have come in
Perfect.
we've only got a few minutes left. One thing to note, Donald, I know you're registered for the conference, probably the virtual version, I'm assuming, since you're not
Yes.
here in person. Have you looked at the Relatives at Roots Tech feature? And if you haven't, after we're out, we can actually hook him up. Which is kind of a related question to me. Number one, take a look at the relatives at Roots Tech, but have you built any of your tree in Family Search a little bit to, because that's a one world tree and that is something that other people can connect to. Have you built any of your tree in there at all?
No, not on Family Search. I
Okay.
built my tree on
Okay.
Ancestry, but definitely
Okay.
looking.
That's, yeah, that's another good opportunity, a free opportunity to build trees and connect with people. Somebody's asked whether this is a syllabus. No, we're just having a really good old fashioned discussion here is what we're having. And so if you want to go back, it is being recorded. So you will be able to go back and watch this. We have someone that says, Mr. Shores, your family history is wonderful. And then they want to know how are ways to better find out my family's slave owner connections. Um, you can jump in. I think one of the things that just be on that wise, just be aware, just look for signs as you go, just keep researching your tree and expect it. Like I said, it was kind of hard actually on my side to find until I got so far back. And then, especially once I get into Virginia, back east, a little bit farther back, that I started seeing more. But again, look at the network, look at the location and what that atmosphere is like. And yes, I can see Donald wants to pipe in on
Okay,
that.
Cheri, what I can tell someone is if they're asking how can they find out who owned their family. I was actually very lucky because the way I was able to find out who owned my family was I was able to come across a record where my second great grandfather and his older brother actually their enlistment into the Union Army back in 1863. My
Yeah.
second great grandfather actually lied and said he was 7 years, about almost 7 years older than what he actually was, so he
Yeah.
could get in because back then they were guaranteeing slaves, "Hey, if you join the army and fight for us, we'll free you." But
Yeah.
on that enlistment, it actually showed who who their owner was. If they were black, it would say, "Okay, they're the property of." Now,
Right.
unfortunately, I have not been able to connect with any descendants of the actual slave owner. I was, however, able to find some descendants. A lot of times, what would happen is that slaves would get leased to other
Yeah.
folks during different seasons. And ironically, my second great grandfather, him and his older brother, they were leased to a German family. And ironically, after they were freed, my second great grandfather actually stayed with this German family for about 6 or 7 years after he was freed and worked for them. I have been connected with some of those descendants, but unfortunately, I think they're maybe just a little uncomfortable of getting back with me. I would check with your local government if you can find out what area your family were slaves in. Check with the county government and see if there's any information that would say who the slave owners were. And then
Yeah.
you might want to start there, because in most instances, your family's last name is going to be the last name of the slave owner. Now, ironically, on the side that I'm talking about, that I know the most about, my family was owned by three different families, but they kept the last name of their first slave owner. So sometimes you can run into issues that way too.
And that's a really great point too. As far as your surname, yeah, sometimes taking the enslaver's last name, but maybe not the last enslaver last name. So they may have been sold or whatever. Location wise, that's a fantastic point, especially with if you can get your family back to 1870 census and then look at based on that location, look at the 1860 slave schedule to see who the slave owners were in the area. Is anybody matching that surname? And look at, is anybody, I mean, that may not have been the last slave owner before Civil War, but that could give you some clues, but also do search around the counties. Look at the slave schedule for those around the county, see if you're recognizing, because there was a lot of interaction clearly, where they're selling back and forth. Let's go real quick. We've got a few more questions coming in. So they said, I have 1% Ghana, Ivory Coast, and my maternal grandma knew an ancestor had married a Black mixed man, and that's all I have. That percent being so low, where do I even begin to look? I will pipe in to say that sounds exactly like my story. I had just about 1%. And my mother, it was through GEDmatch. I could see just under 1% that I had African DNA, and I could see where the markers were, the kind of the location was. My mother had just a little bit slightly higher over that. I didn't think I'd ever find that, really. I kept it in the back of my mind. I'm like, my goodness, that's so low. I don't know where. But because, and in fact, I hate to go back to plugging my own stuff, but there was a video that I did. It's in the on-demand library about finding free families of color and to kind of see the record clues. So I started seeing record clues about the brother of my ancestor, where, like I said, my fifth great grandmother, she turns out to be a free woman of color in early Kentucky. The thing about that is, I don't know their connection to slavery yet, whether there is one. We do have, again, historically, we do have to recognize there was a really significant population of free people of color in our country that contributed greatly to our history as well. And so that is a possibility. But I started seeing her brother variably recorded in documents. So his race was, every once in a while, his race would be noted. So it was being very consistent. But just keep it up in mind and try to, eventually you may find it. Don't get too have too much pressure about it. Just be looking for it. Again, it may not be as clear as it sounds. But anyway, let's see. How do we use our DNA connections to certain white families who have ancestors who are clearly Revolutionary War vets to also gain membership in DAR and other lineage societies? That I can tell you, being affiliated with the Lineage Society, I'm a DAR member, plus I'm also, like I said, I work for the SAR, their headquarters. I will tell you the DNA is making a big, it's making headway. It is slow going so far, but they do recognize that is, I think, going to be one of the ways that we move in that direction. So far, they've been kind of closed to, with adoptees and things like that, but it is coming. And so far, there's still document trail. They haven't fully went in there. I think DAR maybe trying to move the needle a little bit farther, but stay tuned. I know that's going to be something that develops even more as we get some more, especially even too as DNA testing gains not only in popularity but in scientific advances. So here's another one for Donald. Have you heard about Dr. Lakeisha Davis' survey of DNA testing mindsets and research techniques?
No, I haven't. What's that name again?
Dr. Lakeisha Davis.
No, but
Yeah.
I will definitely put that on my to-do list and look her up, Lakeisha Davis. I'm not aware of that, but I thank you for the recommendation. Real quick, Cheri, I know we're not going to be able to get into all the questions, but I would advise if there's anybody listening or anybody replays this, I have set up an email. My email on my profile is different, but I purposely went and set up an email just in case there are any questions, because I would love to talk to anybody in network and answer any questions. I can be reached directly at unearthroots@yahoo.com. That's unearthed roots, just exactly how it's spelled. Also, that will be the name and title of my podcast that I will be launching hopefully by the end of the summer. Unearthed Roots podcast with Donald Shores. So if anybody has any questions that we're not able to get to today, feel free to email me at unearthroots@yahoo.com, and I guarantee I'll get it immediately.
Great conversations. Actually, that reminds me, don't forget those that are, and I can't remember who the host is, just FYI, I'm going to give a plug though. Daughter Dialogues is a really great podcast out there for those who are people of color, women of color who have joined DAR that connect back to revolutionary soldiers. That's a really good podcast out there. So those conversations, and it's a lot of interviews, a lot of conversations about what this means, how they're getting in. That's another really great outlet for that. We only have a couple more questions, so I think we can get this. Somebody's commenting about their Keene family from Kentucky, and they were creators of the best breeds of racehorses. Yes, Keeneland. I'm sure that means that you guys are connected with Keeneland Racecourse. And where is the best place for research of plantations and enslavers in Kentucky? Goodness, a lot of personal family personal family collections are really important. You can find some things in court cases in Kentucky because a lot of people would fight over enslaved populations and different things when people would inherit things. Those are great. Plantation records sometimes made it to universities, state historical societies, local societies. Don't forget that. Also, another question for Donald. Did you do the Y-DNA test? And did your Y-DNA test go back to European? Have you done that yet? I don't remember.
Yes, I have done the Y-DNA test.
What was your haplogroup? Did it go back to European haplogroup or was it African?
No, it actually went back to African. Yeah, it went back to African. And that's one of the reasons why I did it, to see if it would show anything European, but it definitely went back to African, to an African haplogroup. Yeah.
Okay.
Did it on family tree DNA, as a matter of fact, and it did go back to African haplogroup.
Okay. Great. Well, I think that's actually all of our questions. Again, Donald has given you his contact information. If you want anything to contact with me, probably library.sar.org is how you get to a hold of me professionally. Personally, I also have some genealogy. I have my own site, genealogyliteracy.com. You can get in touch with me there. I also have a podcast, Bloodroot, and that's actually all tied into the website, so you can do all that. And I'm excited. We're gonna make Donald get that podcast going though. Unearthed Roots. Remember that name. He's gonna have that coming out very soon, and have a lot more great conversations I know are going to be coming out of that.
Awesome. This has been so great. Thank you both for being here today. We'd also like to thank all of the participants for being here. Just another reminder, this has been recorded and it will be published later for you to review and share. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Cheri.
Everybody.